What if the person who says, I love you more than anyone, is also the same person who makes you feel guilty every time you say no to something? Think about that. Because sometimes control doesn't arrive looking like control, right? Sometimes it arrives as affection. It may sound like, I'm only doing this because I care. I just want what's best for us. Why are you pushing me away after everything I've done for you? Or perhaps the most powerful one, if you really loved me, you would understand. And suddenly, your boundary becomes the problem. Your discomfort becomes selfishness. Your need for space becomes rejection. And your simple no becomes evidence that you don't care or you never loved them. But here's the truth I want you to sit with today. Love does not require you to abandon your boundaries in order to prove that it is real. Love that requires you self-erasure isn't for intimacy, it's asking for access. And those are not the same thing. There is something deeply confusing about being controlled by someone who also knows how to make you feel loved. Because if someone is openly cruel, it's easier to recognize the problem. But what happens when the pressure comes wrapped in kindness? What happens when the person crossing your boundaries is also the person bringing you dinner? The person telling you how much you mean to them. The person comforting you when you are hurting. This is where things become complicated. Because we can begin confusing affection with entitlement. We can start believing because they love me, they deserve access to me, or they can speak to me, belittle me. They don't. Someone can love you and still have to respect your no. Someone can care about you and still not get unlimited access to your time. Someone can be disappointed by your boundaries without having the right to punish you for having one. Today's reflection, we are going to talk about what happens when love becomes a language used to silence your autonomy. You see, affection can make manipulation difficult to recognize. When someone is warm, generous, attentive, or deeply affectionate, we naturally want to believe their intentions are good and pure. And often, they may genuinely care. But caring about someone does not automatically make every behavior healthy. This distinction matters because a person can say, I'm doing this or that because I love you. But the more important question is, does what they're doing respect you? That's the question. Imagine someone constantly demanding your time. You say, I can't talk tonight. And they respond, but I just need you. I thought you cared about me. Now, you're no longer deciding whether you have the capacity to talk. You're defending your love. That's the trap. Your boundary has been transformed into a referendum on your character. And suddenly, you're thinking, maybe I'm being selfish. Maybe I should just do it. Maybe I'm making too much of this. That is how boundaries begin to disappear. Not always through one dramatic violation, sometimes through hundreds of tiny moments. You learn that saying no comes with emotional consequences. One of the most powerful forms of emotional pressure is creating a false choice. You are told directly or indirectly, choose your boundary or choose me. If you love me, you would do this. If I mattered to you, you wouldn't need that boundary. Why do you need privacy from someone you love? We are family. You shouldn't have secret. Notice what's happening here. The conversation is no longer about the actual request. It has become about proving your loyalty. And that creates tremendous pressure because most people don't want to lose connection. So they surrender. They say, okay, yes. They give access. They explain themselves. They compromise again and again. And eventually, they discover something painful. They've maintained the relationship by abandoning themselves inside of it. That's not sustainable. A healthy relationship can survive your boundaries. In fact, healthy relationships depend on boundaries. Guilt is not always evidence that you've done something wrong. Sometimes guilt simply means you're doing something unfamiliar, especially if you've been conditioned to prioritize everyone else's comfort. If you've spent years being the person who says, it's okay, don't worry about me, I got it, I'll handle it, whatever works for us, I'll do it. Then the first time you say, actually, that doesn't work for me, it can feel incredibly uncomfortable. You might feel selfish. You might be portrayed cruel. You might even feel like you are hurting someone else. But discomfort isn't the same thing as wrongdoing. Let me say that again. Feeling guilty does not automatically mean you are guilty. Sometimes, guilt is simply the emotional withdrawal symptom of becoming less available for manipulation. And this is where empathy can become a trap. You understand their feelings. You understand their history. You understand their disappointment. You even understand why they're angry. But somewhere along the way, you stopped asking, what is happening to me? You became so focused on managing their emotional experience that you abandoned your own emotional needs. Remember, not every boundary violation looks aggressive. Some are incredibly soft. Someone keeps showing up after you've asked for space. Someone repeatedly pressures you after you've said no. Someone makes decisions for you because they believe they know what's best for you. Or simply someone uses caretaking to bypass your autonomy. They say things like, I already handled it for you. I need you to say no. So I just did. You will thank me later. This may sound loving, but love does not eliminate consent, and care does not erase autonomy. There is also another tactic: minimizing your reaction. You're too sensitive. You're taking this the wrong way. Why are you making this such a big deal? I was only joking. I didn't mean it. And now you're defending your own feelings instead of discussing their behavior. This is why it is important to distinguish compromise from erosion. Healthy compromise sounds like this: you need this, I need that. How can we find something that respects both of us? Boundary erosion sounds like, I'll keep pushing until you give me what I want. Those are completely different dynamics. So, how do you reclaim yourself after losing it? You start by separating love from access. Someone can love you without having unlimited access to you. Someone can love you without knowing everything you are thinking. Someone can love you and still have to wait for your availability. Someone can even love you and hear you say no and survive it. You don't have to make your boundary cruel. You don't have to become cold. You don't even have to punish anyone. You simply have to become clear. Say something like this: I care about you, but I'm not comfortable with that. Or you may say, my answer is no, and I don't need you to agree with it, for it remains my boundary. Or simply, I understand that you are disappointed. My decision hasn't changed. That's it. No 10-minute explanation, no courtroom defense, no emotional essay, no desperate attempt to convince them that you're still who you are. Your boundaries aren't proof that you don't love people. They are simply proof that you understand where you end and someone else begin. And here's something powerful I want to share. You don't need everyone to understand your boundaries for it to be valid. Some people will understand and respect it. Some won't. Some will respect it. Some will test it. Some will become angry because the version of you they benefited from no longer exists. That anger is information. It doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. Sometimes it simply means the relationship is being forced to evolve. And that's okay. Because the goal isn't to create a life where nobody is ever disappointed or disappointed with you. The goal is to create a life where you don't repeatedly disappoint yourself just to keep other people comfortable. So, my dear friends, I invite you to take a moment and ask yourself, where am I saying yes because I'm afraid of what will happen if I say no? Who immediately comes to your mind? Now ask yourself, what do I believe their disappointment means to me? Do I believe I'm selfish, unloving, difficult, or ungrateful? Then ask the deeper question. Who taught me that love requires unlimited access? You don't have to answer it immediately. Just notice what comes up. Because sometimes the boundary you are afraid to establish is precisely the boundaries that would allow you to finally breathe. So to close today's reflection, I want to remind you, you're allowed to love people without becoming available to everything they want from you. You are allowed to care without carrying burdens. You are allowed to listen without obeying. You are allowed to forgive without reopening the door. And you are absolutely allowed to say no without writing a paragraph afterward, without apologizing for existing, without proving that your love is still real. Because healthy love doesn't say, give me access or prove you don't love me. Healthy love says, I respect you enough to let you remain yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real test. Not how much can someone give me, but rather, can we love each other without either person disappearing? That's the real question. That's the kind of relationship worth building. One where affection doesn't silence your boundaries, where closeness doesn't require self-abandonment, where your no isn't treated as a rejection, and where your autonomy isn't the price of belonging. So protect your peace, protect your time, protect your body, and protect your emotional space. Not just because you don't love people, but because you are someone worth loving too. And that includes you. So if today's reflection spoke to something you've been experiencing, don't just scroll past it. Please take a moment and ask yourself, where have I confused being loved with being accessible? Write your thought or your answer somewhere private. And if this message resonated with you, please subscribe to this channel. Here we talk about boundaries, self-worth, healing, and relationships. And above all, we talk about the quiet work of becoming someone who no longer abandons themselves to keep the peace. You don't have to become harder protect yourself. Sometimes you simply have to become clearer. See you in the next reflection.